Hey, good morning. Welcome to a Friday. Happy Friday. That's redundant. I know, kind of the same thing. Happy Friday. You get the idea. And the weekend is upon us. And here at the Weather Mic, we like to give you the forecast for the lower 48 United States through the weekend. So it's going to be a shorter forecast maybe today because we're almost there. We'll start with the hazards, the watches and warnings across the country. And here they are. Flash flood watch is in effect for the Cascades of Oregon and Washington. Interesting. We do have a system moving on shore in the northwest, and that's going to kick up some winds for Nevada and even into Wyoming. So we got red flag. We have red flag warnings there, to use better English. All that orange and purple, it's the heat, that dome of high pressure that settles over Texas, which is not unusual at all for August. Bruce reminding me that in the comments yesterday. Heat in August in Texas is a given, and we're going to have that continuing through the weekend for sure. So heat advisories in the orange and excessive heat warnings as you get into that purple. And of course, we're adding heat with humidity there. Some flood warnings for mainly the rivers, a little bit of Kansas into Missouri, and then also Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. And then up there near Duluth, a little bit of dense fog advisory still this morning. Our weather spotlight takes us to Portland, Maine. Not the Portland I grew up near Portland, Oregon. This is Portland, Maine. I have not yet been to Maine, but one of these days I really do want to go. Beautiful state, I understand. So this is a chunk of New Hampshire and a chunk of Maine. And temperatures in Maine, mainly in the 70s, and then in New Hampshire, a little warmer, upper 70s to low 80s. And here's what's going on. Afternoon showers and storms through the weekend, most likely in the mountains, no severe weather. But interestingly, Hurricane Ernesto, which is well offshore, but it is causing some problems along the coast. Building swells for this weekend, peaks on Monday, dangerous rip currents are possible. And also high astronomical tides may result in splashover. So there's your weather spotlight for Portland, Maine. Taking a look at the rest of the country on the surface today. Our best chance for severe weather across Kansas, northeastern Oklahoma along that stationary front that unfortunately for Texas has become stationary. So it's not moving any further south than this, it looks like. But that could be the focus for some severe weather this afternoon, evening. Heavy rainfall possible, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. So we're talking Nashville to Chattanooga, down to Montgomery, Birmingham, and just to the northwest of Atlanta is kind of your bullseye for the heaviest rain. It's that surface low in Minnesota that's going to be heading into the Great Lakes with that trailing cool front. And so just widespread showers and storms for a lot of the country from that low, and then of course monsoon for Four Corners, and then the approaching storm in the Pacific Northwest. So lots of areas with a chance at least for some showers. Highs today. Well, there's your heat for Texas, and that's going to be the story through the weekend. And it's very hot. I mean, Roswell 105. 102 Amarillo, Lubbock, Midland, Odessa, 104 Abilene, 10 is that a 5? 105 Wichita Falls. You get the idea. So pretty much 100 almost the entire state. Upper 90s Houston, but again with humidity. 100 Shreveport, Louisiana, Oklahoma City, up into Arkansas is at Fayetteville at 100, 103 Little Rock. So you get the idea. So that's why we have excessive heat warnings here. Makes sense. 90s for the rest of the South, some 80s in Florida, and then turning to 80s as you head north into North Carolina, Virginia, still some 80s and 70s for the Keystone State of Pennsylvania and also up into New York State. Cooler as you head into the Great Lakes. So a lot of 70s to low 80s for Michigan and Wisconsin, 70s for Minnesota, North Dakota. Mostly 80s where I live in Iowa, some upper 80s for Nebraska. Those turn back into 90s for Kansas. And then as you get on the other side of the Rockies, a little cooler, but still on the warm side, Western Oregon, 70s to low to mid 80s even, Western Washington as well. and hotter on the eastern side of the Cascades, which is pretty normal, near 90 for Boise. Then down the central California, mid 90s, and then hot desert southwest, 110 Phoenix. Enjoy. Tomorrow, we don't see a huge change. Our low in Minnesota moves into Michigan, and that trailing cool front into the Ohio Valley. So just widely scattered showers and storms all the way from the Texas Gulf Coast through Oklahoma and North Texas. So relief from the heat maybe if you get a storm near you, and all the way up the coast. The Four Corners with monsoon moisture, that continues all the way up into Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada too. Speaking of Nevada, and I think we have critical fire weather possible with that approaching storm in the Pacific Northwest kicking up the winds, and it has been dry. We'll throw in critical fire danger also for parts of southeastern Oregon into northern Nevada. And then you see that approaching storm for northern California into the Pacific Northwest with scattered showers and storms there. To start the day tomorrow morning, well, where the heat is, it's going to start the hottest, as you could expect. 70s and even low 80s for Texas into Louisiana. 70s for Arkansas and Oklahoma into the deep south. As you head up the coast, lows still in the 70s, and I'll throw Tennessee and Kentucky into that as well. Also Indiana into Ohio, and even into Pennsylvania. You have to get all the way up into New York State, New England to see some 60s, and even a couple lows in the 50s for Maine. Lows in the 60s for Nebraska and Iowa, but some 50s for lows as you get up into Wisconsin and Minnesota, into the Dakotas, into Montana, and also 50s for, say, Wyoming to start the day. But then you get further east in the Intermountain West, we see a lot more 50s for lows. And Baker, kind of the cool spot on this map, which is in eastern Oregon, that's a 48 to start the day. 50s for much of the rest of Oregon and Washington, 60s as you go down California, and then starting the day at 90 degrees tomorrow for Phoenix. Highs tomorrow, Phoenix at 109, 105 for Tucson. Low 100s continue from eastern New Mexico into Texas, into Oklahoma, into Louisiana, even parts of Mississippi. A little cooler as you head further to the east in the south, and even some 80s down in Florida. Low 90s, South Carolina into Tennessee. Then we see some 80s as we get into Kentucky. That's 89 for Lexington. 80s in northern North Carolina into Virginia. We see more 80s in Ohio. That's 88 for Columbus, Ohio. 90 though for Cincinnati. 70s though, when you start getting into parts of Pennsylvania, 80s and 70s for New York State, and more 70s as you head up into Maine. 70s pretty widespread for the Great Lakes, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the parts of the Dakotas, 70s to near 80. Low 80s for Iowa, mid to upper 80s for parts of Nebraska, but cooling off as you head, or warming up, I should say, as you head further west. In Nebraska, that's upper 90s for eastern Colorado. Low 90s all the way up into Wyoming and eastern Montana. That turns to 80s as you head into western Montana, but very hot for Boise, 99. Again, this is tomorrow's highs. And then, cooler in the Pacific Northwest as we would expect. This is kind of my favorite map. This is the rainfall for the next 2 days. So ending Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. So today and tomorrow basically. And where we see that low in the Great Lakes with that trailing cool front is where we see the concentration of the heaviest rain, and not super heavy, but we do see widespread amounts here, around 1.5 inches, approaching 2 inches for some. A little bit of monsoon moisture still for Arizona up into Utah, and then the Pacific Northwest bringing some showers there, 1/2 inch to maybe 1 inch of rain for the Pacific Northwest, western Oregon and Washington, Northern California. All right, Sunday's forecast, we do have a chance for some heavy rain and flash flooding when you look at looks like Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York State. Otherwise, again, that low exiting the Great Lakes into Canada, that trailing cool front where we see a lot of showers and storms concentrating, and then circling back up into the plains and also the Four Corners all the way up into the northern Rockies and the Pacific Northwest to round out your weekend forecast. Highs on Sunday, not a big change for Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma into Mississippi. Same with the South, still mid to upper 90s for much of the South. Some 80s though for Florida. Low 90s, South Carolina, 80s for North Carolina and Tennessee. There's a 79 for Lexington, a little cooler. Congratulations. 81 for Columbus, Ohio. 79 for Indianapolis, Indiana. Mid 70s, Pennsylvania into New York State and in New England and up in Maine. We see temperatures approaching 80 again for the Dakotas, upper 80s, mid and upper 80s as you head further west in, say, South Dakota into Wyoming, even some low 90s, mid 90s up in Montana. And then as you head even further east, very pleasant for western Washington and Oregon with temperatures in the 70s, but with those showers. 80s to low 90s across the central California area, and then hot. The heat continues, the hot continues for the desert Southwest. Even Salt Lake City, pretty warm. 92 it looks like. All right, let's take a look at our GFS model as we head through the weekend and maybe a little bit into next week. So this is what's happening right about now, according to the GFS model. And we see those light showers up here in Minnesota, moving into the Great Lakes, back into the Ohio Valley, light showers for Kentucky and Tennessee, North Carolina, and a few showers, very light for Nebraska and Kansas. And I want to take advantage of this map since I have a pointer here to kind of talk a little bit about what's going on. So we have the low here, so a little bit of circulation around the low with that trailing cool front. And so we'll see the concentrated areas of showers and storms moving east as we go through the weekend. Now that trailing stationary front should be the focus for a few strong storms in Kansas today. But we have that area of high pressure centered over Texas. And what that does is the circulation around that brings up that moisture into the Four Corners, so that's kind of a driver of the monsoon. And so we'll see some scattered showers throughout the Four Corners up into the Rockies with that. And then an approaching some showers with an approaching storm for the Pacific Northwest. Kind of more of a zonal flow from east to west. We don't see any large dips bringing in any real cold air. Cold is relative this time of year from Canada, or any, except for that high pressure in Texas. That's where we're seeing the concentration of the heat. But anyway, let's move forward in time. This gets us later in the day today. We start to see some showers busting out in the Ohio Valley down into Tennessee, not too far from Nashville here. Lighter rain near the low, Wisconsin, UP of Michigan. And here we're seeing some of that activity in central Kansas. And as we go later into the afternoon, if this comes true, we could see some severe storms in here, maybe some supercells, more popcorny showers with some locally heavy rainfall for parts of Tennessee into North Carolina, and then up here in the Ohio Valley as well, with lighter showers near the low. In the Great Lakes, we do see that monsoon moisture bringing some showers into New Mexico and into Arizona. And then as we go overnight tonight, approaching Saturday morning, this is like 3 a.m. Saturday, some light rain moving further to the east, lingering into Arkansas and Missouri, watching the west coast here for increased area of showers. As that moves onshore, we get into the day Saturday. We see some showers here for parts of Tennessee into Kentucky. Again, the light rain and the cool temperatures, and for Michigan, very nice. As we get into the afternoon on Saturday, we see more showers and storms for the south and through Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, now moving into West Virginia and Pennsylvania as well. And more showers now for the Pacific Northwest with that system offshore. And we continue with that high pressure around Texas, pulling that moisture up into the Four Corners. That is typical for monsoon. late in the day Saturday, this is kind of almost overnight. We see some showers, Mississippi, Louisiana, nice relief from the heat, even in the overnight hours. This is around midnight, Saturday night moving into Sunday morning. Some light showers in the east, a few light showers here in the Central Plains. The low moving into Canada, eastern Great Lakes area, bringing with it showers. There's our heavier rain expected for Sunday for New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, maybe Maryland and Delaware. And as we get through the day Sunday, that's the concentration of showers, mostly East Coast. The heat of the day will bring more showers along that front for parts of the south. And some of these could be some heavy rainers. We continue with the moisture in the four corners as well. And that gets us through the weekend into Monday. So that's kind of a look at your forecast through this weekend as we take a longer view, as we always do. Here's your temperature probabilities for the next 6 to 10 days. The heat concentrated over the southwestern and south central United States, up through the center of the country, mainly along the Rockies. And it's one reason why we're seeing higher temperatures, say, for eastern Colorado than we are for western Nebraska. So that heat being pulled northward. The cool temperatures with that low out of the Great Lakes into the east, and then for the Pacific Northwest, cooler than average temperatures are likely. And then our precipitation chances, the Northwest, the big winner here with the best chances for above average precipitation. Even though we are going to see some scattered showers and storms for the South, that's average, or maybe even a little below average. So even though you're getting rain, the precipitation chances are still below average for this time of year, and especially for the Mississippi River Valley, moving into the Midwest of Indiana, Illinois, parts of Kentucky and Tennessee should be drier than average. That is a look at your forecast through the weekend and a little bit beyond. I do appreciate you being here. Have a great weekend, but I will see you tomorrow here on the Weather Mic.